and welcome to the Wolf Digest. I'm your host, Emeros.
And co-host Terkanil. Today we are going to be picking up a few of the things from the last about few days to a week, give or take, depending on how much you're looking at. And we're going to start...
notably the WWDC.
Yeah, that thing.
Worldwide Developer Conference.
It's the Apple thing.
It's of course the Apple thing.
So, normally we don't talk about Apple, but it's been making a little bit of news. So we're going to talk about Apple.
Well, we always have to talk about Apple at least twice a year because they have 2 times that they actually release products and update things.
And at least for the first little bit here, we're going to try to be nice.
Hey, we agree.
We're going to try. We're going to try.
I don't think it'll be too hard. Come on.
So we're going to start and just basically jump through some of the things that they announced, brought up. And so if you're into Apple, haven't heard about a lot of this, then here you go. We got a couple of articles that we're going to be going through. One from Macworld, the second from VentureBeat. The VentureBeat one will be covers some of the stuff about Mac Pro, a little more in depth. So when we get to that, you can have some more detailed information. Yep. With the Macworld, it touches on everything else a little bit better. Things that they brought up were like with the tvOS update, which adds some new options such as game controller support, multi-user support, similar to like what you have on Netflix for recommendations and so on.
That'll be actually a very nice feature to have there.
I know it was nice when Netflix got it, so
yeah.
Made it very useful.
You're going to get synced up lyrics. That'll be pretty cool.
There are some new screensavers, a new home screen. I don't know what the current one looks like, so maybe it's useful.
I'm sure it'll be better than what is there already.
And then going on, they announced the new watchOS 6, which adds new options for watch faces, new developer options to improve what they can display or project to the watch. New options, I guess, in the App Store for the watch itself. And then there's some other health items they added in, including a couple specifically for women. In iOS, there's a fair number of things. The biggest thing that I've heard several people pull out, especially iPhone users, is dark mode.
Yeah. Finally, they've got dark mode in there now. There's been several builds of Android that have had it, but they're catching up. That's good.
And I know a lot of Apple people are excited about that part alone.
Oh yeah, that's a huge difference. I mean, yeah, I've got dark mode now in Windows for a lot of the screens that they got. So that was kind of a nice add-in. Dark mode browsers, those have been lifesavers, of course.
And then there's performance boosts, changes to some of the major apps, Safari, Mail, Notes. They added in a swipe option for the keyboard.
Yes, that is, they call it Quick Path, but it's basically swipe. So they now have the same thing that Galaxy has been putting in their phones since what? The G5?
5.
Yeah, I think it was the 5 that introduced swipe.
So something that I know a lot of Apple users have asked for.
Yeah, it's a very
overhaul
useful
to the Apple Maps system, more privacy protections, alternate sign-in options, work options for working with their home security and routers, HomeKit. Other enhancements with like a HomePod, AirPod, photos. They actually showed off a whole new list of emotes or emojis called memojis and animojis. Because why not?
Yeah.
And then there's other shortcuts and changes for Siri that were coming.
Yeah. It looks like they're also converting the iOS for iPad to an actual iPad OS. So they're
So breaking it out so it's separate from iOS.
yeah.
So I'm guessing that it's just to make improvements to one versus the other a little bit easier on the developers.
Yeah, because I mean, side by side windows and things like that are going to be features that probably won't be as useful on the iPhone as opposed to an iPad for sure. I mean, even Android kind of did that when Android 3 landed, and that was kind of the tablet OS. But now they still kind of use the same thing and can translate between the two fairly readily, but it's still a little clunky in some cases. Hopefully, this will go a long way to easing that on the Apple side of the fence.
And it's one of those features that, while some people have not really seen a lot of use, I've actually used the multi-window option in just my phone, and I've actually had a lot of use out of it. Especially like, for example, if I've got like a book I'm reading open, and I have something else open, like a chat window or something over in the top half of my screen or something like that. So just something to be able to have literally both things up. So I'm sure a lot of the people using iPads will enjoy that functionality.
Yeah, exactly. And it
Then
looks
there are
like
other,
they've reduced the latency on the Apple Pencil as well.
I've never used that. I actually haven't seen anyone using it before.
Well,
So, but
I can see graphic artists using it a lot.
yeah, it's definitely. I mean, for like when I use this like a stylus on Android or even on my Windows Surface, a Microsoft Surface, I should say. I use my stylus there quite a bit, and it's you have to have that low latency to really be able to utilize it well when you're doing art.
Oh, exactly. It drives me batty when you're using a pen or something and it just lags behind.
So these are a lot of things that Apple users are definitely going to like, especially some of the new. They have some new multi-touch features, gestures and such. So probably it looks like just things to make it easier to do various things.
Yeah.
So overall, just various. Most of the things I'm seeing here are more like quality of life improvements. And while some are things we've seen in outside the Apple environment for a while,
it's nice
for those
that they're getting parity for it.
And it's fine. It's nice to see someone that's actually finally getting into that environment, because it's one of those things that you see in the ads where especially like Galaxy ads, because they like to do that, where we've had that thing for years.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, now you can finally see why we like these options.
Yeah.
All right.
It'll become ubiquitous, just like the pull down notifications bar.
Yeah. So I mean, there's been things that have been traded back and forth, but a lot of things have been going, starting now in the Android market, especially, and then ever so slowly filtering in. And some of these are some of the bigger options that we've had for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So Apple users are going to enjoy these.
Yeah.
Now, let's go over into the computer market.
Well, this is pretty cool because they haven't updated the Mac Pro in quite some time. I mean, they've had the what they dubbed the trash can design, right? It's an ultra compact, like ITX kind of system that's not going to be very powerful, and they've been crying out for a return of the really powerful Mac Pro desktops, and so we're finally able to deliver on that. And oh wait, that's SteelSeries.
SteelSeries.
Yeah. So with the Apple Mac Pro, they have a couple of things. The big thing is the screen, of course, that you're going to be looking at this computer on. And they actually call it an XDR screen, which is, think of it as like an ultra HDR. It's supposedly got even a wider range of color than HDR even has. Let's go back to the article here. It talks a little bit about it here.
It was just unveiled as a 32-inch, effectively LCD, Retina-style display, 6K. A lot of the workstation type monitors out in the you can find out in the wild right now are 5K, so it's a little bit of a step up.
Oh, it's a lot of a step up.
And then XDR apparently is short for extreme dynamic range. As compared to the HDR, which includes a P3 wide color, 10-bit color, and reference modes built in. Also a super wide viewing angle, thanks to a custom polarizer, and there's a few other options on there that can balloon the price if you want to actually have those particular options.
So the really nice thing about this monitor is that it actually can run indefinitely at 1000 nits, which is an extremely bright monitor, and it can peak at 1600. And the way it does that is it has kind of a back of the monitor that resembles the front of the Mac. So it has that, we'll call it a cheese grater look, but that works as a heat sink to help dissipate the heat off the screen for running at that high nit rate.
So while that monitor starts at $4,000, and it has the optional upgrades put it at $1,000 premium. Now, sorry, for $5,000 is where it starts.
If you pick the nano textured glass to help with the anti-reflective coating bit, that way you don't get such a reflection on the glass if you got like a window behind you with the direct sun, that kind of thing. So is that worth $1,000? Maybe, maybe not.
5,000, but yeah.
Well, no, the
6,000 at the end.
The 1,000 for the extra upgrade. Right.
Yeah, so it's one of those, decide if those extra feature options are worth it to you. But with the base price of 5,000, we actually did go out and look at monitors up in this range, and there are some that were above, there are some that were below. But considering what they're trying to apparently do with this monitor,
I think it's actually priced fairly well, honestly.
It's not that bad.
I mean, the one thing that kind of threw me off is when they announced the accessories for the screen. Let me go ahead and
let's come back to that, actually.
Oh, you want to come back to that?
We'll come back to that.
Sure. Let's talk about the computer then.
This one is, the actual box itself is something that's going to be kind of interesting, especially with how they're cooling it. Because they showed off some of the bits, like how they're with cooling and some of the add-ins. The base price for the new Mac Pro is $6,000. And the $6,000 is giving you, as I said, a workstation. This is not something you would normally see consumers using. So if you're trying to think about it that way, don't.
Yeah.
This is meant for high-end rendering, especially.
Yeah.
So start there. Now, the things that we're going to be throwing into this is an Intel Xeon processor ranging between 8 and 28 cores. It's going to have a 1,400 watt power supply. It's going to have 3 fans, totally as quiet as they can get to put some airflow through this thing. And it opens from the top from what I've seen. They just pull it up. Just for design aspect, if I'm curious.
Yep.
The board apparently will top out about 1.5 terabytes of RAM, 2933 megahertz ECC.
There's 12 slots, so take that for what it's worth.
Yep, and there's 8 PCIe slots inside with multiple Thunderbolt 3 and USB-C ports and 2 10 gigabit Ethernet ports.
Yeah, and they did create a new kind of port that they call a MPX module. You can see it right here. You have your standard 16, but then they have a extra, what looks like 16 or so as well, but that's power delivery to be able to power the board with more than the standard amount of power from the PCIe lanes. And that's where the new Vega Duo cards are going, because one of the options you can get is a Radeon Vega 2 Duo card that basically has 2 Radeon 7s on a single PCB. And that's probably not going to be a cheap upgrade at all, but that's going to be a pretty powerful workstation card for sure.
And then also they did feature a new custom video editing card, an Afterburner accelerator card, which is capable of processing, it says 6 billion pixels per second at 3 streams of 8K ProRes RAW video or 12 streams of 4K.
Yeah, and that's going to be a massive technological advantage right there as well for the software that can take advantage of it.
So overall, for those who are in the Mac space and want that, this will be a substantial upgrade. Now,
Very much so.
let's go down and talk about the last couple of things on the list here that we were paying attention to. Well, I'll come back to that in a second. The other things, there were mentions about Mac OS changing. We don't understand most of the changes really in there. So if you want to see that information, we have the Macworld link in the description down below. Go check it out.
Yeah,
but the one that we
the notable one is the breakup of iTunes.
So they broke it up into 3 parts. It'll be in the OS itself. And that was going to be broken into music,
Apple
podcasts, and TV.
Yep.
We talk over ourselves, you can't tell.
Oh, we just think the same, right?
Sometimes.
Not like we use a script or anything.
People do scripts? Oh, right.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
We don't take time to do that kind of crap. But they also showed off like some voice control stuff. And there's a video out there if you want to go see how that can be used.
It's actually pretty cool. It looks like it would be a very big boon, especially to handicap, wheelchair bound, those kinds of users that need the extra assistance that those accessibility features offer.
And I know Windows has some of that stuff, but I think that actually might be a little bit better than what we have.
Oh, so it's definitely better. They have a lot of really cool features that help with being blind and things like that.
Now, there's 2 other items we skipped over, and I skipped them on purpose.
Can I show the video? Please.
Let's stop being nice. Okay. I definitely think it's time to stop being nice. Show it.
Yes. $49.99. Notice the applause. They're like nano texture.
The adapter will be $199, and the Pro stand $999. And like the Mac Pro, they'll all be available in the fall.
You hear him stutter?
So that is a new Mac Pro.
Oh, there was one person that clapped when that stand price was listed, but there was a whole lot of murmuring in that crowd. Oh my goodness!
And some laughter.
You couldn't hear that over the murmuring, though. I mean, there was audible groans going on where it's like, wait, what? Because if you missed it, he said that the screen only was the $49.99, but then he quickly rolled through the VESA mount and the stand. Now, I can see them wanting to keep the monitor price down because most of the people that are going to be using these devices are probably going to be using these on desktop mounts with adjustable arms, right? And so you buy 2 of these, you put them on a little double arm thing, and boom, away you go. And $200 for the VESA mount, though, I have some hesitation there.
Because the VESA mount, basically what all it is it's giving you something you plug into that round hole on the back of the monitor, and then gives you something you then stick onto a VESA compatible mount. And because for whatever reason, they didn't want to mar the back of the monitor.
Yeah, so they made that little circle so that you can still see that cheese grater heatsink. I mean, it makes some sense that, like I said, they wanted to keep the price of the monitor down, but how much is a stand really? I mean, we use a lot of Dell monitors at my work that adjust vertically, tilt, and rotate as well. And the entire monitor with stand is less than $200. How much is this stand really costing them to make?
And if you actually look at the stand itself, it's basically, it looks like it's just an aluminum base with a single, dual swivel point, up and down.
Yeah,
that's it.
2 pivot points, and then of course the circle that would probably allow it to rotate.
Yeah, so you can turn it vertically and move it up and down maybe a couple of inches. That's it for $1,000.
Well, I think, like I said, the screen, that's probably worth it without much question at all. The VESA mount's definitely overpriced because that's a bit of metal and some rotating ability. It shouldn't be $200.
Especially
The
considering that most
stand,
Visa mounts cost far less. If you want to see what we mean, just hit Amazon, Walmart, Newegg, anything, and search for Visa mount and have a gander.
well, that's why the stand is so ridiculously overpriced. I mean, maybe they didn't plan on selling a lot of them at all. Maybe they needed to recoup the design and whatnot, so they're just overpricing them so they don't sell many. I don't know. It seems like a bad business move to me. They should have just included it with the monitor, priced the monitor higher, and just went with the punches for them overpricing a monitor, right? That's what they've done every year. Why not continue with that and have a whole bunch of stands that are discarded or whatever? I mean, yeah, it's bad for landfills and such, but compared to this is the only thing people are talking about after this, it's not good. It's not good for a PR standpoint for sure. But honestly, the thing that is the big talking point for me is the overpriced hardware. I mean, kitted out, if you went and found all the individual components in this Mac for the base config, which remember was 8 core, 32 gig with no accelerator card, and they give you a dual Radeon RX 580 Pro, which is basically the 580 but with Pro drivers, and they give you 2 of those in Crossfire, and a 256 gig M2 SSD. That's
Just
it.
256 gigs.
Yeah, that's it for $6,000. I mean, that's just ridiculous. There's actually some calculations out there that figure that the full decked out system could be upwards to $50,000.
Do you have that link, by the way?
It's in one of the articles.
No, the other one.
Ooh, you mean the parts list?
Yes.
This wouldn't be a tech channel without, a parts list, right? So
I'm excited to see what could we do in the standard, quoted PC world.
that's ridiculous, but
It's
under
definitely
6,000.
ridiculous. Yeah, how much can we shove in there without going into Xeon territory?
Yeah,
Because that's just expensive on its own right.
well, we got to maintain the
throw in-
workstation level CPU, right? So
Yep.
what did we do? We went with Threadripper. 32 cores of Threadripper with the Wraith Ripper cooler on top of that, a Meg X399 motherboard, which is practically one of the most expensive X399 motherboards. 128 gig of RAM instead of a piddly 32 because we're going to be working with video, right? And this is all ECC RAM, by the way. And then we put in a 2 terabyte 970 EVO NVMe SSD, which is quite honestly one of the most expensive SSDs. We could have easily put in a $300 2 terabyte NVMe, but it wouldn't have been the Samsung. We opted to just go for the best, right? And the Ultrastar Helium 10 terabyte hard drive to store that 8K video footage, because you're not going to store that on a 256 gig SSD. You'll probably have that out on the network somewhere. So I hope that the 1 gig Ethernet would actually have been a 10 gig Ethernet connection, but they weren't. We kitted this out.
10. I heard 10, so.
Well, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt then and say it was 10. So the Radeon Pro WX 9100, which is essentially the Radeon 7, but as an Instinct card, so it has your Pro drivers. I threw this in here instead of a dual Radeon 7, just so that we have an actual Pro card, as opposed to a Pro card that's been sliced into a near consumer prosumer card. Even though AMD does offer Pro drivers for the Radeon 7 now, we'll go with this because it still loads better than a dual RX 580, even if they are Pro 580s. Simple fractal defined sleek case with a window on the side, 1300 watt power supply, Windows 10 Pro. Straight up costs us $58.86 and some change. I mean, that is, in a nutshell, what you could get for the same price as an 8-core, 32 gig, 256 gig SSD Mac Pro. Apples to apples?
Not
Maybe.
entirely.
No, this one
We'll touch on some of the other bits in a second here as well.
This one would probably rip through video streams just as well as having one of those accelerator cards, which are most likely an expensive add-on board. So you could probably buy 2 of these machines for the cost of one of the Apple computers with upgrades enough to be, mildly sufficient for what you want to do.
One thing I wanted to, so in the during the when they announced it, they did say dual 10 gigabit Ethernet ports.
Good.
We can add a link into the description that will actually link over to Anantech, who did a live blog of the keynote. So if you want to see everything splayed out, almost, frame by frame, slide by slide, it's in there. So if you don't think we touched on it well enough, have a look.
Yeah.
And then they're going to be, if you go up to, and the thing about this thing, the system is that the Mac Pro will actually allow you to use multiple of these Radeon Pro cards, and they're going to use Infinity Fabric and an Infinity Fabric link between them all. So they should act, quite fast. All the cards are going to be utilizing our HBM2 memory. So the cards themselves are actually quite powerful. You have to admit that much.
Yeah.
Is it the one thing that's kind of worries me about it all is that apparently they're going to be using passive cooling in the system.
Well, to be fair, it's essentially a server laid in a tower case. Servers run passive cooling. If you noticed, it had 3 very large fans in the front that basically blow air through the entire rig, and they'll probably use baffles to help direct that over the key components. So it's not going to be passively cooled like you would think in a gaming tower. This thing's going to have active airflow over all the heat sinks. It's just not going to have a turbine sitting on top of the heat sink of a video card, for instance. It's going to take the airflow from these intake fans and impale it through the system, because I bet you these fans are going to be quite the air movers.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how it actually works out. I know of a couple of channels that twitched when they said that they were going to get their hands on one. So
yeah.
We're going to see what happens with that. But yeah, one of the slides actually did show, here's how the airflow would effectively work with these passive cooling options. Mm-hmm. So how well it's going to work under the work when you start really putting these things under load, I don't know. Maybe it'll work out well.
It should. I guarantee they beat it to death trying to get it just right. So that is why they are considered a premium brand, is they do at least do their due diligence.
So there is that much. Now let's go over to the CPU really quick. Because the CPU lineup they're going to need to be going to in order to support what they're claiming is brand spanking new.
Yep. The really interesting thing was that Cascade Lake 3000 series got launched, basically. So
3200 specifically,
yes. These are their W class single socket workstation cards or CPUs. So you have starting at 8 core here at the bottom, all the way up to the 28 core that they were talking about. Now, the interesting thing is the non-M versions only support up to 1 terabyte, whereas the M versions support up to 2 terabytes of RAM. So it suggests that the motherboard will be able to take these M series, but if you notice, it comes at quite the price premium. up to $3,000 more than the non-M versions to get up to that high RAM. So I don't see that being a very common option that people will pick. But even the non-M version, the 28 core, is still going to be $4,449. That's pretty pricey, right? The more interesting thing to note is the TDPs. Notice even for the 8 core, we're still at 160 watts. If we look at the old gen, the clocks are pretty much the same, maybe slightly higher than what the new gen has. That's 3.6 base, where this is 3.5 and a 3.7. These are at 160 watt, whereas the old ones were 120 watt TDP. And notice the prices were significantly cheaper due to the smaller core count. We start looking at the same core count, like this one, for 1100. It actually is giving us a pretty decent discount, down to $749 for the slower one. And then you got this one that's pretty much at the same price, $1199. So we're seeing about a linear move between generations here. Core for core, it's going to be about the same price, maybe up, maybe down, depending on what part of the lineup you're looking at. Now, the increased TDP, and if you notice the cache size, 16.5 on these 8 cores versus 8.25. So what's 18.25 times 2? Well, 16.5. There's a reason for that. The architecture for these Cascade Lake chips are essentially taking slightly tweaked for things like Meltdown Inspector, Skylake architecture, and then sticking a few things like AVX 512 instruction set, and then gluing 2 of those old Skylake CPUs together on one BGA, I think they call it, yep, BGA package, so that they work in concert in a single socket. So it's essentially a 2-socket server stuck into a socket. And so you have 2 Skylake W's essentially strung together, and they called it Cascade Lake. Yeah, I think they were a little pressed on what they were going to do this generation and had to double their core count really quick because of the looming Threadripper and Epic specter that they had to deal with.
Well, they didn't really bring up all that much, considering the fact that the previous line was a 3175, which is what they announced last year and showed off previously, including the infamous demo where they had basically an giant air conditioner sitting under the table to cool the thing as when they overclocked it to 5 gigahertz.
Yep.
So this is now the step up from that. So we have basically higher core counts, higher cache, and this is the next step up that line. So again, if you look at what you're comparing there, we're going at about the 2856, it's that 3275, the step up there. I can't remember the TDP on the old one, but we have a higher cache and higher cost. Go figure.
Yep.
Last year, the previous one, the chip was actually you can actually find it out on Newegg right now, go figure, for right around $3,000.
Mm-hmm.
And the motherboards are in the $2,000 range if you can find them. So give yourself an idea. And we're looking at a motherboard here for the Mac Pro.
Well, it's a custom
board.
Yeah, so you're going to get a lot of development costs in that. At least 1,000.
This is going to be interesting.
Yeah. I mean, there are reasons for the Mac Pro to be expensive. Quite that expensive? Maybe not. And we know they're going to charge a premium on each of these pieces. If you want the 28 core, they're definitely not going to just charge you $4,400 to upgrade to it. They'll probably charge you $1,000. We'll see. But they're definitely taking their money back in their motherboard development and all that, even with the low end that doesn't really use any of the extra features, but can.
Yeah, I'm not sure quite yet, I don't think, how the packages for the Mac Pro will scale. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out for that.
Well, it is due out in the fall. Pretty generic, I know, but when it does land in the fall, we're going to be all over the Apple Store that first day, and we're going to play with that configurator, and we're going to have some fun staring at sticker shock, because it's going to be a kick in the pants for sure. So if you're going to make a lot of money doing high intensity graphic art, like you're doing video editing for a major movie or something like that, these might be a very worthwhile consideration. If you're a home user that's doing this out of your home office and you're not a contractor for said movie company, this might be a little more expensive than you should be paying, because there are equivalent or better systems, like we showed, that you can get your work done just as easily for a lot less.
The only real difference there comes really to time, and there's still going to be a lot of question as to what all is going to happen where, or I should say rather, what kind of benefits it's going to provide in the long term.
Oh yeah.
And when you actually start really grinding into it, how would like a Mac Pro using this, work out compared to a PC that would be built up in the same similar fashion?
Oh, I'm very interested to see what those accelerator cards paired with a setup like even just the RX 580 in Crossfire. I'd like to see what that kind of a setup could do when actually pushing stuff through a rendering. And I want to see some benchmarks before I can call it worthwhile. And so we'll have to wait till the fall to even get to that point.
At that point, we know of at least a couple channels that are going to go ham on it.
Yeah, so let's just hope one of them doesn't drop it this time.
Now, some will. It's bound to happen.
So the one other thing that we alluded to in our last little chat was Ice Lake. It was announced for laptops, and more specifically Ultrabooks and Ultra Portables. And these chips had 9 watt, 15 watt, and 28 watt TDP targets. And they're 4-core, 8-thread, and they've got some pretty cool stuff. They support LP4X 3733 megahertz RAM, up to 32 gig of that, or if you go with the slower DDR4, you got 3200 up to 64 gig. So these are, make no mistake, not desktop chips. These are definitely ultra portable, and they're 10 nanometer chips. They did improve the graphics in these things significantly, and I would recommend getting the LP4 RAM if you're going to be using the iGPU. And the iGPU actually performs quite well compared to the Gen 9, and would probably be about the range of a low-end discrete graphics card. So I'd wager around, a 560 level, maybe.
Could be something on there.
And they do compare it against the Ryzen 7 3700U, which is a Zen Plus core with a Vega 8, I think it was. And as you can see, it does slightly improve its frame rates over that 3700U. So that's pretty impressive. That's for their top end Ice Lake part, the 25 watt. So yeah, not bad. But we do know that the Vega that's in the 3700U is still lower than like the 570 or a 560. So we'll see. I think this will be an interesting chip to see what its actual performance is in benchmarks, but I'm not holding my breath. It'll probably make things like the Microsoft Surface a faster machine for sure. Definitely as far as the gaming and stuff is concerned. So it'll make your Surface actually more viable for a lot of different things. And they got the Wi-Fi 6 Gig Plus on the SoC and everything. So definitely some pretty cool things that they got coming out with that, as well as this dynamic tuning. They say that it's assisted with machine learning, but that's kind of a buzzword nowadays. It basically just smart turbos. Call it that.
And at least the one thing that we're looking at with this Ice Lake is just simply that it's been hinted at for a very long time. And this is finally something we'll actually start to soon see in the wild, as it's the first new truly, big change from Intel. Because they've been working on that 14 nanometer
10 nanometer for years. I mean, it's been delayed now 2 years even.
Yep.
And we should have been seeing these things 2 years ago, but they've just been setback after setback, and it's definitely hurt them because they have essentially stalled out. They've been releasing Skylake over and over again, but on a improved 14 nanometer node that gave them some extra megahertz, but that's it. And AMD has been doing very well at taking advantage of that and just hammering them with Ryzen. And this new Ryzen that's coming out, the 3000 series, is looking pretty nice. We'll see once the benchmarks come out, but I think we're going to be pretty impressed.
So if nothing else, at least it's going to be a step in the right direction for Intel.
Yeah, they need to get back on their feet for sure.
Yeah, especially considering the fact we have Ryzen about to pop up and go wild.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that, probably a year down the line, we'll start to see, a U size Ryzen from the
Zen 2.
from the current architecture.
Mm-hmm.
So a Zen 2 architecture, yeah.
Paired with a Navi GPU, most likely.
Especially with how they have, like we discussed previously with the RDNA scalability.
Mm-hmm.
You pair that with a Zen 2 architecture U CPU, and the outcome could be quite substantial.
Yeah.
So
we're going to see a leapfrog over these current benchmarks against the 3700U for sure. But we're not going to see that APU until next February, most likely.
So still a bit of a step out, but it's definitely something that, like we've been saying, it's good to see, actual competition in the CPU space.
Oh, it's been an exciting couple of years for sure. And
I mean,
it's just getting better and better because Ryzen keeps coming out swinging, and we get to see what Intel's answer to that is. Sadly, we did get a leak of their roadmap, and we don't see any desktop 10 nanometer for at least leading into the early part of 2022. So it's looking pretty gruesome over on Intel's side. I'm thinking they're going to have to either adjust some of their pricing, or they might have to go the Core 2 route and start gluing their desktop CPUs together as well, and not just with Cascade Lake on the Xeon side, but do it to their desktops too, just so that they can improve their core counts. Because they're definitely not going to save money or have their nice margins if they start dropping prices to compete.
Yeah, so we have a lot we're going to have to end up trying to take in. It's not going to be a whole lot of, big news from Intel outside of this.
So or we'll be pleasantly surprised. I mean, they might, like I said, insert something into their roadmap as a stopgap.
Yeah, they still have a couple of, usually summer is when they start to throw something out. So we might there's still a chance we could see something in the next couple of months, maybe through August. But
we did get the Workstation Xeons dropped today, so that is, I was expecting that to be a little later after June for sure, but it's not bad that we got it now. It might actually spur the continuation of Threadripper and give us a Threadripper 3. That would be some interesting stuff.
There have been rumor of, like we mentioned previously, of Threadripper 3000, but nothing official has even leaked, or unofficial has even leaked out.
Yeah, which is surprising. Maybe they weren't planning on doing it because they had the ability to do 16 cores with the 3000 series Ryzen. So,
but they did say, I think Lisa Su did say that they did have, Threadripper in the pipeline.
yeah, she officially stated that Threadripper was going to come back. So, I think right now they're just trying to use as many of their dies for Epic and the remainder for Ryzen on the desktop because they've been making some pretty heavy inroads into servers. And Rome coming out, and from what I understand, they've already been shipping Rome to Amazon and Google and some of those big name companies for their data centers, as you can go onto the Amazon cloud and get a Ryzen powered, well, should I say an Epic powered E3, E5 kind of instance powered by Rome. So pretty impressive.
Especially if you want to
stuff.
save a little bit of money.
Yeah, you save 10% straight up over the equivalent Intel build. So they've already done some benchmarks in the cloud relating to that.
So it's gonna be. I'm honestly curious to see if Intel has any kind of answer to Ryzen 3000.
Well, they did until MDS and Zombie Load came along.
Donk.
Yeah, tell me about it.
So, but I think that's really all that we've really got. We had, everything with Apple, our Xeon-Ws, and how that interacts with that mess. We have the Ice Lake stuff. We should hopefully start to see soon, so we can see how that's actually going, what that will actually do for Intel.
And the ridiculous Cascade Lake pricing, because compared to the Threadripper, even 4,000 for the 28 core is going to be a hard sell.
And there was a lot of reviewers who looked at that and went, really? And it should also be noted that those things run hot.
Oh, yeah. The 28 core is rated at 205 TDP at the 2.5 gigahertz base clock, mind you. It has the ability to boost up to 4.4 gigahertz. And that's definitely going to increase your wattage way past 300, maybe even past 400 watts. So expect a lot of power to be used by these machines if you're going to run them that hard. For the Threadripper, they don't even get up that high. I think they top out at 300. But yeah, that is all we have for you for today. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. We do have some more stuff coming out because Google actually just talked about Stadia and gave us some more information about that. So we'll probably be talking about that in the next one. So stay tuned and we'll catch you next time.
Have a good one.